Another effort to divide California. It's called New California, and the founders want to create a 51st state by separating the rural areas from the coastal cities and Sacramento. They say California is a failed state and that we've become governed by a tyranny. Yesterday, founders read their own Declaration of Independence. They say they'll work with the state legislature, who would have to vote to split up the state before a resolution can be submitted to Congress.
California, huh? New California. New California, this is a new secession movement. I'm familiar with the State of Jefferson movement. State of Jefferson movement is originated from Yreka, California, which is a small town I lived in for 12 years of my life when I was a kid. And I actually lived in the house, the same house that one of the founding members of the State of Jefferson used to live in back in 40s, 50s, back in that time. So I'm very familiar with the State of Jefferson movement. The State of Jefferson movement is completely different than New California movement. I'm not familiar with it, but I can tell you about the State of Jefferson movement, and I can tell you about the factors as far as why people would want to secede from California and separate it. Now, the people in inland California are completely different than the people on the coastal areas, the coastal region. The reason for that being the people that live in the coastal region, with the coastal region being Los Angeles, San Francisco, the whole coast area, those people, they're not even real Californians for the most part. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are from other states, and they bring their liberal pie-in-the-sky ideas to California, and they completely changed the political landscape of the state itself. And they turned it into something that it really has never been, and it's not. These are people that are from, small Midwest towns that got tired of their Americana small town. Everybody's a hick in their small town. They're all prejudiced, racist, and they just want to get away from that sort of mentality. So they go as far as they can. Ultimately, they end up at the ocean in California, and then they all just have their liberal insanity turn into politics, that manifest politically. And now we have California, which is a completely just communist state, right? And it's going to shit. It's a complete shithole. California is a shithole. And, I was born in San Bernardino. I lived in Yreka and basically grew up in Yreka from the time I was 4 years old all the way to about 15. And we had to leave there when I was a kid because of the economy. My mom divorced my stepdad. My sister got pregnant, and my mom and we lived up in the Karuk housing projects. I was like the only white kid there amongst, the Native Americans. I had to live there for a while. So, I'm not unfamiliar with federally provided farina and cornflakes. I'm very familiar with that lifestyle. But we had to move out of there. We moved to Michigan when I was, 15. Because her foster dad worked at Chrysler as an engineer, and he helped us, and we moved out to by Pontiac, Michigan, off of Baldwin Avenue. So we moved away from that area, that far northern California area, because of the economy, and that area has lost 72% of its economy since 1992 due to environmentalism. 1992 being the year that Clinton came into power there. And then the Democratic environmentalist push really started to steamroll. Now, California is a funny bird. A lot of people that live in California aren't even from California. They're from these small Midwestern towns, and they feel like they're stifled in these small towns. They're just, they feel constricted by Americana. They feel constricted by patriotism and that rural, American mentality, and they feel like, I'm going to go to California and leave all of these dumbasses behind, leave all these morons behind, So this is really the mentality of the people that end up on the far coast of Northern California, or far coast of California, and they change the political landscape of the state itself. And then, they have these pie-in-the-sky ideas as far as, what's going to make the world a utopia and what's going to make it perfect, and they implement these crazy environmentalist ideas. And what they do is they kill industry. They kill rural industry. They killed the fishing industry, the mining industry, the timber industry, pretty much just about every single agricultural industry that you can think of in rural California. So the people that live in inland California and far northern California, they're completely different than the people that live on coastal California. Coastal California is just all the people that ran away from, really the center of America, Midwest and, down south and everywhere else where they just wanted to run away from themselves, basically. And that's really how I look at it. I mean, you may look at it differently. You may be a California resident yourself, but I can see it for what it is, and I can say this honestly. I have the state of California tattooed on my arm, so it's not something that I take lightly when people are talking about dividing the state, but I understand the necessity of it. The necessity of it being that we're talking about two completely different economies, totally separate economies here, and different people as well. And you can't govern for two sorts of people. I mean, it's like New Israel, basically. That's what, if you look at it, if you want to analogize it, that's what it seems like. So, as far as California, I mean, I could tell you guys a bunch of stories as far as the reality of what it's like in far northern California. It's bad. It's totally bad. It's a statist economy. There's a real statist control over the state. It's a police state. The sheriffs in these counties, for the most part, a lot of them are overzealous in their policing. A lot of the local police departments are as well. And a lot of people are on government assistance. And the ideas that the coastal Californians have about far northern California and inland California and everywhere else, they think that they can't make it on their own if they were to secede. A popular argument that they make is that, well, what are you going to do as far as all the state funding that you get from the state of California? They act as if their tax dollars are really doing anything for these rural counties. And the reality of it is, well, if they divide, if they secede and become their own state, then they can regulate their own economies and then they can flourish on their own. And they don't need that state funding. That's the whole idea behind it. The idea is to break away from the state prison, to really break away from that socialist prison that California has created for rural Californians. They can make it on their own. If they can get away from the environmentalist regulations of California and say, okay, let's bring back mining, let's bring back timber, let's bring back fishing, let's bring back all these agricultural industries, then they can make it. The source of California's water is where I grew up at. It's Mount Shasta. I grew up in Wairika, but Mount Shasta's right there. It's about 30 miles away, and that's the source of California's water, for the majority of California's water. That's the mouth of the Sacramento River, and that's where most Californians get their water from. So if they were to secede, and then that would break away from the state of California itself, it would have large economic impact on the state of California. It would really enrich in the state of excuse me, New California and or Jefferson. So that's something that scares the politicians in Sacramento. But it's an interesting thing that's going on in California. These people aren't hicks. They're not rednecks. They're not bumpkins. They're not ignorant. These are not ignorant people that live up in the far northern California counties. They are not stupid people. They know exactly what they need to survive and what they have to do. And there's really a patronizing attitude towards the people that support the State of Jefferson movement, coming from people, in San Francisco and Los Angeles. And this is prevalent. I mean, you can look at it, you can see it in the comment sections, in a lot of places where they bring this topic up at. There's a lot of people in L.A., San Francisco, and Sacramento, and everywhere else that just don't understand it. They don't get it. They're isolated. They're living within their own bubble, and they're really a divided people in California. So, when I was 19, I hitchhiked all the way from Detroit out to California. It took me 4 days. I made it all the way back to Wairika, and I wanted to make my life there. I left Detroit. I made it back to Wairika, and it didn't work for me. It didn't work for me in far northern California because there were no jobs. I was 19 years old. I was able-bodied. I was willing to work. And the only thing that was out there was the California Conservation Corps, the Cs. Okay, that's what they call them, the Cs. And what that is, they pay you less than minimum wage. You know, it's like $6 an hour, and you're out there and you're just blazing trails out in the mountains. You know, just moving shrubs, basically. You're just maintaining the mountains, and it's like $6 an hour, and they keep you out there for 2 weeks at a time, and you're basically just living out in the woods. You know, on a state chain gang, pretty much is what it is. It's like slavery. That's basically what it was, and that program had been in place since the Great Depression. It was a Great Depression program that was put in place. It was implemented by FDR as a part of the New Deal. And it's just one of those socialist programs that California, you know, implements in replacement of any sort of industry that would actually give people a living wage. Things like, you know, being a lumberjack, or, you know, something that's real substantive, something that somebody can make a real living on. I mean, $6 an hour, you can't do anything in California with that. So I opted out. That was the only thing I could find out there, and I said, no, thank you. You know, I'm not going to do that. It's slavery. Forget about it. It's not even worth it. It wouldn't even be worth it. So, you know, after that, after I figured out California wasn't the place to be, I left, you know. So, but if I could go back, if it was something that would be viable, why not? But the state that I grew up in is not the state, you know, it's not the same state. It's completely different nowadays, totally different. So, but like I said, I attribute that a lot to, you know, naive people that move out there and think that they can create some sort of utopia and think that they know better than, you know, rural America, you know, but they don't. But as far as how I feel about it, I mean, really, the State of Jefferson movement needs to be looked at a little bit more seriously. I don't know about this new California movement, who's really implementing it. I mean, they're trying to bite off a larger chunk, it looks like, than the State of Jefferson, because the State of Jefferson is not trying to separate the coastal region from the rest of California from north to south. It's just dividing the far northern reaches of California as well as the southern reaches of Oregon. So it's a different secession movement. But really, I mean, what's going to happen? The way the media politicizes it, the way that they propagandize it, they're going to make these Californians. They're going to try to make these Californians look like rednecks. They're going to try to you know, sneak in some notion that these people are racist. They do that all the time. That's going to be a part of their agenda. That's how they're going to do it. They're going to try to propagandize it. They're going to market it as being a racist bumpkin hillbilly movement. Now the new California movement, with them saying, okay, well, how about this? We're taking everything from all the way down to like Riverside County, you know, San Diego and everything, all the way up north. You really can't call all those people, you know, hillbilly rednecks, because you're talking about the majority of California there. So basically, I mean, if you look at the way the voting habits are in California, if you look at that, if you look at the maps, you can see that New California is divided pretty much from, you know, the way the Democrats are divided by the Republicans there in California. And it's just funny how people that live in more rural areas tend to, you know, vote conservatively, tend to vote for smaller government because they see less need in government services. You know, they have a different perspective on life. You know, they're more independent. These are independent, hardy people that don't want any help, basically. And they say, well, just let me do it on my own, you know. So, but California. I don't know. That's all I got to say about it. I mean, I'd love to hear some people's opinions on it. Leave your comments down there in the section, you know, in the comment section. Just please, you know, rate, like, subscribe, share, all that. All right, y'all. Take care.